Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the latest edition of the Leadership Speaker Series. My name is Anthony and I'm going to be your host for this afternoon. Today we're joined with an amazing industry person with over 20 years experience in managing hotels across Sydney. Our guest was also once the Wanda Surf Club board riding champion at the age of 8.
That's right.
An amazingly progressive leader. Our guest has a proven track record in building business, growing revenue, improving profitability and guest experience. Prior to joining Ovolo Hotel Group, our guest found her passion for boutique design hotels through her tenure as the GM at Urban Hotel Group. Preceding this, she successfully executed 2 hotel rebrandings with Mirvac Hotel Groups in her roles as operations manager at Sebel Manly and the rooms division manager at City Seagate. She also performed part of the pre-opening team at the Mercure Sydney and all seasons on Crown in her position as assistant and front office manager. A self-confessed high achiever who doesn't believe in a work-life balance and enjoys the gym and walking the dog. Please welcome to the stage Amanda Cottome. Welcome.
Thank you, Anthony.
What is board riding?
Board riding?
Yeah.
As in surfing.
Surfboard riding?
Yeah.
At 8?
Oh, look, it was surf lifesaving.
Yep.
You know what surf lifesaving is.
Yeah.
So it wasn't actually surfing as in standing up, but literally going out and saving people in the ocean.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you lived around the beach, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Look, I want to go on a little bit of a journey and kind of explore your career in the industry. Where did the passion come from? What kind of lit this fuse to say, right, hotels, that's where I want to be?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anthony. I think the best way to answer that is, and I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but I've always had a love of people.
Yep.
You know, even at school I was highly social. I was the one that was organising everyone. I was the one that looked after everyone when they had dramas in their life and so on and so forth. So I guess that for me, hospitality made a lot of sense because I just love taking care of people. And I guess if I apply that passion for people into the hospitality industry, you know, it's not just about providing the guests with an amazing experience, building rapport with them. It's about really developing relationships that last a lifetime with colleagues, with team members, and helping, you know, the team achieve their goals.
So how old were you when you thought I'm going to choose a career in this industry?
It's interesting because I can't really remember the point when I said this is the place I'm going to be. I very much so fell into the hospitality industry. I had a great careers advisor in Year 12 at high school. Wasn't sure about what I wanted to do, and I ended up working as a telephonist at the Wynyard Travelodge Hotel. Wow. And I guess from there it really, I guess it felt very comfortable for me to be in that environment. It was an environment that I excelled in, and I just followed it from there.
How was the family like in terms of saying, hey, I'm going to go work at a hotel? Were they supportive? Were they kind of a little bit not really sure?
That's an interesting question,
Yeah.
Anthony. My family, I'm a very independent individual.
Okay.
I was just doing it.
Not at all.
I was just doing it, and I guess look, the family have always been supportive. For mum and dad, it's always just been about my happiness, and they could see that it made me happy.
Yep.
So they were happy for me to follow, you know, what worked for me.
Yep. What was it like being a telephonist back at the Travelodge at Wynyard? What was?
Good morning, the Wynyard Travelodge Hotel. You're speaking with Amanda. How can I help you? Oh my goodness, that was
like that
24 years ago.
Wow.
And I guess, Anthony, back in those days, and this is really showing how old I am, we had switchboards. So we had 15 lines, telephone lines coming in, and my job was to answer all of those calls. And this was before mobile phones were invented.
Wow.
So I'd be managing 15 calls at a time, and I guess it could be quite a stressful position. But for me, as an entry-level position into the industry, it was fantastic because I got a great understanding of what departments did what, where to refer callers. I guess had a chance to learn the property management system without being in the customer face. It was a very, I guess, forgiving place to start, because if I made errors, they weren't all too great.
You could always just hang up on them and say, "Oh, sorry, the line
Oops,
cut
sorry.
off." So where to from there after doing your phone stint?
Yeah, so started as telephonist and worked my way up. So front desk, and back in those days there was a tendency for hotels to, I guess, separate the reception position into receptionist and cashier. So I started as a receptionist. Then I moved into the cashier role, and I was so excited that day when I finally made cashier. And then I moved into reservations, and then finally front office supervisor, assistant manager, and that was all within the Wynyard Travelodge. And then from there I went pre-opening, assistant front office manager, at All Seasons on Crown, which was a boutique hotel in Surrey Hills at the time. From there I went into the pre-opening team of McCure Sydney, 517 room property, much bigger than what I was used to, and the largest hotel in Sydney at that time. So I went into that role as assistant front office manager. From there I moved to Citygate Sebel Sydney, which was a Mirvac property at the time. And I spent 5 years there, moved up from FOM to rooms division manager. And then I moved over to Sebel Manly to do the rebranding there as operations manager. Stayed there, loved it. I lived in Manly, too convenient, way too convenient.
Wow.
Stayed there for 2 years, and then I ended up at Urban St Leonard's as general manager. That was my first GM's gig.
Well, let's get to that.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, I want to talk about this transition where you've kind of taken these little baby steps out of the phones, onto the front desk, and then into cashier, and then into being a supervisor and a manager. How did you make that transition to go from doing to almost managing, and what were some of the I guess the challenges that you had to get your head around?
It was really challenging because, as you guys know, the hospitality industry is a highly social industry. So the transition from, I guess, being a reservationist to being a supervisor, it was in the same property. So these were my friends that all of a sudden I had to supervise. So for me, it was very uncomfortable at first, but I knew that for me to succeed, that I needed to have those tough conversations. I needed to be able to give direction. And I guess naturally, I do tend to lead anyhow, so it was quite natural for me to do that, but at first it felt very uncomfortable.
How did you get over that, or how did you approach that first kind of difficult conversation with one of your friends?
It was really hard, Anthony, because it was my best friend.
Okay.
And
Tell us about it.
Yeah, it was really difficult. In fact, we'd gone to school together, and it just wound up that we ended up working together. And he was really rude to this customer on the phone. I mean, really rude to a customer on a phone. And I thought, oh my goodness, I have to have this conversation. So I just immediately just took him away from the phone and had the conversation. And later on he said, you know what, I know that would have been really hard for you, but I appreciate the feedback and I know that it was warranted, thank you. And from there, but after that first situation, it was fine from there. We were both comfortable with each other's roles.
I mean, that's one of the biggest things that young managers have to deal with, being everyone's friend in a department, and then all of a sudden you're kind of like the big boss, and you've got to make those calls.
Absolutely, Anthony, and I see a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people struggle with that, and particularly, if someone didn't get a promotion and then someone's promoted, there's often a little bit of conflict in teams surrounding that. So yeah, it is challenging, but I think that as long as you've got the right support and leadership and someone to guide you through that process, it's okay.
So what was it like being a front office manager?
Front office manager? Yeah, I love being an FOM.
Yep.
Yeah.
What was your average day? What did it involve?
Average day, my goodness, it was such a busy, it's such a challenging role. But I guess that it depends on the property as well. I think I guess the most challenging property that I managed as an FOM would have been at McCure Sydney with 517 rooms and often 6 to 7 receptionists on the front desk on any given day. On some Sundays we had 450 departures. So the volume of people coming through was quite phenomenal. So there needed to be a lot of preparation and planning you know, ensuring that everyone was set up correctly at the beginning of the shift and you know, ready to smile and do what they needed to do. But very, I guess, every day changed depending on the needs of the business. Obviously a lot of training, a lot of coaching, a lot of communicating, a lot of, I guess, refining policies and procedures so we could improve guest experience and also improve efficiencies. Yeah, very, very diverse role.
So I guess one of the, if anyone's ever worked on the front desk, 400 departures is just
huge.
Yeah, exactly.
Huge.
How do you prepare your team before a shift? How do you kind of get them excited about?
Wow.
Yeah, dealing with that.
Really, really tough.
Yeah.
I guess I recall pre-opening and opening the first week, there was a time there where we had receptionists saying, wow, this is just way too much.
Yep.
What we ended up doing there at Mercure at the time was, because we had a high proportion of families in houses, we got a clown in. So we had a clown in that would get, you know, do balloon animals and kind of occupy the children during that really, really peak period.
Wow.
But I guess getting the team amped up for it, it was really about just ensuring they knew the processes that they needed to follow, telling them that, hey, just focus on the person in front of you, acknowledge the person behind, don't worry about the 8 other people waiting in the line, because we'll have a guest services manager go through and look after them. So just focus purely on that one person and give them the best possible experience that you can. Yeah, and I guess that we'd also celebrate success at the end of the shift. You know, great work, we got through that. You know, let's all go for a beer.
If you think about that guest experience, that's almost the last touch point that a guest has got before they leave. So you don't want to kind of undo all of that hard work that you've had during this day. You want to make sure that the departure is 100%. Okay. And I remember when I was working with the core, Mercure Sydney was very much known for its inbound tour groups. There was a lot of inbound business there. What's some of the challenges dealing with you know, inbound tour groups and I guess, you know, multiple market segments in your properties?
Yeah, definitely. I guess Mercure Sydney had a lot of inbound business and a lot of air crew as well, actually, and that was the first time that I'd ever dealt with air crew. So dealing with per diems, where I'd literally be counting out, you know, $20,000 worth of per diems per week, putting them in envelopes and counting them out with pilots and
Is there a little allowances?
Yeah, they're per diems. But in relation to inbound tour groups, I guess it's been a long time since I've dealt with them, so I have to cast my mind back. But I guess there's a lot of changes. You know, from a reservations perspective, just the inputting of names, my goodness.
Yeah.
You know, how do you spell this? Making sure that everything was perfect for when the guest arrived and the right name was on the key card wallet. Yeah, constant changes. Logistics, constantly, you know, looking or working on logistics, making sure we had the right amount of staff available to do the baggage pulls to get the bags up. You know, often we'd be going onto the bus and distributing keys there just to minimise the amount of people that were in the lobby. So a lot of planning goes into play for the inbound tour groups. And also there's a lot of idiosyncrasies associated with different, I guess, people from different countries like different things. So we needed to ensure that, you know, for example, the Japanese always had rooms with baths, and so on and so forth. So yeah, very interesting.
So where was the next step after Mercure? You've opened that, and that's been around forever and a day now.
It certainly has. So I ended up actually I did a stint for SOCOG, the Sydney Olympic Games. So the idea behind that, and I know this is a little bit off track, but the idea for the Olympic Games Villages program was that we turn the Olympic Village into a hotel. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah, right.
So as part of that program, I was the first person actually to do an install of opera in Australia in the Olympic Village.
Wow.
Yeah, so I worked with Anthony Stevens, who I believe is the Director of Operations for Fidelio now, Fidelio. On that. So that was really, really different and cool. And then from there I moved into Citygate Sebel Sydney, which was managed by Mervac at that time.
Yep. So were you, and what was the position you went to there?
FOM again.
Okay. And I guess what was the difference between that property and Mercure Sydney? Were they similar property?
Huge difference.
Tell us about
Anthony, huge difference. 517 rooms to, I think it was 270.
Wow.
So it was almost, half the amount. And I guess working for Accor versus working for Mirvac, two completely different businesses.
What's the biggest difference between the two?
If I cast my mind back, Mirvac was a very young company at the time, and it kind of operated a little bit more like a small business, so it was a lot more personalised. It had very rapid expansion plans, which meant that it needed a lot of emerging leaders to come through the business to be able to do all these hotel openings and rebrandings, and that presented with it a lot of opportunity. And I grabbed that opportunity with both hands. Also, I guess that from a values perspective, I just felt that at the time, I mean, things have changed a lot since then, but Mirvac from a brand or from a value alignment was it was much more aligned with my values, I guess you could say. So I learned a lot more through that period with Mirvac than I did. Yeah.
I guess it's important to make sure that your values align with your organisations, because you're going to go on that same journey. But I think a really important point I'd like to explore this is going from a big, really well-known brand such as Accor to Mirvac, which at the time probably wasn't a big player in the hotels market. And I guess, how do we encourage more students to kind of jump at that opportunity and take? What's the benefit of going from big monster to kind of almost little brother?
I think that there's a lot more opportunity with the small. This is just my observations are that there's a lot more opportunity with smaller businesses. There's a lot less competition for new positions that are coming online. I'd say that would be the key.
You almost get exposed to different things in the business. It's not just you're put in a little bucket and say, you're in front office and that's all you're going to do. There's opportunities, I guess, to cross-train.
And certainly as the businesses become smaller, the role becomes less confined.
Yep.
So rather than being a master in this one space, you're exposed to a lot other areas of the business. And I'd have to say probably the smaller the hotels that I've worked in, the more that I've learned across departments. So for example, when I was front office manager at All Seasons on Crown, I was responsible for payroll, HR, file management, and accounts receivable as well. And
you're not going to get that in a big hotel.
Absolutely. So later on, I could speak with confidence to the AR clerk about the policies and the procedures and I guess best practice.
I want to talk about the Urban because I've visited that hotel a number of times, and I think it almost started to shape this whole lifestyle thing that everyone's talking about now. Yes. But when Urban first came online, there weren't too many products that were similar to it. I guess, what was the motivation behind bringing a product like that, particularly out at St Leonard's?
Yeah, look, I think the initial reason that I went to Urban was I was finding it very difficult for someone to take a punt on me as a general manager, because I hadn't had any food and beverage experience at all apart from conference and catering. And I guess that most hotels have F&B. And when I saw the position become available at Urban, I wasn't really looking at the brand. Yep. It was more so just the opportunity to, I guess, achieve a general manager's role. And then when I started working for Urban, which was about 9 years ago, so Anthony's right, there weren't any boutique hotels in Sydney at that time, true kind of lifestyle hotels at that time. So Erdy Group, when they started that brand, were very forward thinking. And then I just fell in love with lifestyle hotels from there.
And we will talk about lifestyle hotels in a sec, but so that was your first experiences at being a GM in a hotel at Urban. What was day one like?
Oh,
yeah,
it was frightening.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Anthony, I thought I was ready. I was ready to take on the world, and how wrong I was. No, in all seriousness, the business had only just started. I think that they'd closed for a refurbishment for around a year, And at the time that I commenced employment, we were running at around 55% occupancy. We weren't making a profit. So I guess that, I know we're talking about the first day, but this really, really frightened me when I looked at the figures.
We can talk about the first 12 months, it's all right, go for it.
I looked at the figures and I went, oh my goodness, how am I going to turn this thing around? I guess that the other thing that I didn't anticipate also was I'd work for big companies. When I say big companies, I mean companies that had a lot of, I guess, support systems and infrastructure behind them, and Urban at that point didn't have those or that support structure. The larger companies as well, typically they have sales and marketing based in head office.
Yep.
And sales and marketing was an area that I'd had exposure to before, but probably more from a revenue perspective, not necessarily from a business management perspective.
Yep.
So I was on the steepest learning curve that I've ever been on my life when I took on that role. So learning about F&B, learning about managing F&B operations, trying to figure out how we generate business for this property. So sales processes, hitting the road, creating relationships, getting involved in the local community. And from a marketing perspective, guys, you know more about me than marketing right now than what I did back then. It was a very, very challenging time.
So did you have a mentor? Did you have someone that could almost guide you, or
At that point, I didn't have a mentor, Anthony, but the great thing is that I had so many incredible connections.
Okay.
So the first thing that I did was I reached out to all the great salespeople that I'd worked with through the years. Tell me how this works. Can we catch up for a beer? What kind of spreadsheets do you have? Da 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 da. And then what I did is I basically just built a plan from that and had assistance from them. And same with marketing as well.
So just tap into your network.
Tap into the network.
That was all it is. That's the secret to being a GM.
Tap into the network. And I joined HSMAI
Yep.
at that time. To try to learn more about sales and marketing.
So you start at this property and it's not doing too well. You're the head honcho. You've got to turn it around. Don't know too much about everything. And all of a sudden you start to make it all work. It all starts to come together.
It became an incredibly successful business.
What was the turning point?
Oh, the turning point. It took some time because it wasn't just about sales and marketing and revenue. It was fundamentally, there was a lot of culture change that needed to happen in that business. The business was bleeding. The headcount was too high. There were a lot of things that we needed to overcome, and it took us around 9 months, I think, to really get her on track and start to. We'll see a really nice profit come through, and I guess so that it could satisfy the guarantee that the owners had on the lease.
So you turn it around within the first 12 months.
Yep.
What are you now, like the golden child of Urban?
I was. Maybe not year one. I think we had this unofficial golden, the golden child, we called it at the GM's Christmas party, and I won it a few times. But
well done.
I was really, really proud of that property, really proud of what the team had achieved. We had an awesome team there at Urban, and we had so many wonderful connections with the community. It was really sad to leave that property.
And I guess what was the hardest thing about that first 12 months? Because I know it's taking it from where it was to where it is great, but personally, what was the hardest thing for you?
I think the hardest thing was turning the culture around in the business.
What was the culture like?
The people are always the most difficult, right?
Yep.
So the culture was, all the team worked in silos. It was a 100-room property and all the team worked in silos. No one wanted to help anyone. People with terrible attitudes. We had a food and beverage department that wasn't breaking a profit, and yet we had department heads eating salmon in the restaurant every day while the staff didn't get a staff meal. It wasn't right, and there was a lot of resistance to the changes that I was implementing.
So how'd you do it? How did you get everyone to come on a journey with you? Because I know it's easy to come up with a plan and a strategy.
Yeah.
But how, as a leader, do you bring everyone on a journey with you and say, come with me?
Absolutely. I think that, Anthony, I'd like to tell you the textbook answer.
No, I want the real answer.
But the real answer is I was under pressure to turn this business around in a very quick period.
Yep.
Yes, I created the vision.
Yep.
There were people that got on board. There were people that didn't get on board.
Yep.
Some of them left the business, and that was totally fine. I think that sometimes, if people don't demonstrate the values of the business, if they're, slightly or very reluctant to change, sometimes if you want to move your business in the right direction, you need to make a tough decision.
So was that your team, or was that just their teams? It was basically just everyone had
No,
to
no, it wasn't. Definitely not everyone, but there was, just a negative attitude that.
How long did that take
business.
to almost change? Because culture's huge.
Culture's really
change.
challenging, Anthony. I'd say around 5 months.
Yep.
5 months to turn it around, and we did that by implementing some HR systems, reward and recognition system, really, communicating the urban values at that time, and that really assisted in the change process happening a lot more quickly.
And how did you know that it had changed? What was the measure that you used to go, right, we've done this, we've landed this cultural change?
Oh, every single KPI that you could imagine started to increase.
Yep. I'm
a huge believer in employee engagement impacting all KPIs within the business. Employee opinion surveys or engagement, net promoter scores increased. Obviously, the net profitability increased. Yep. We had people that felt empowered and they took charge of their individual areas and they met their targets. Absolutely, at every KPI within the business increased.
So what was after Urban? Where'd we go to next?
After Urban to Ovolo.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about some of these achievements that you've got on your bio. Took a TripAdvisor number 8 hotel to number 3 within the first 12 months. I'm guessing that was Ovolo?
Yes.
Okay. Awarded number 5 in the top 25 hotels in Australia.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yes.
Awarded TripAdvisor Traveller's Choice Award in 2016 and 2017.
Yes.
Where does that all start? Where does that growth? Where does that change? Where does it all begin?
Yeah, I think for Ovolo, number one, it's important to understand how imperative the bricks and mortar is and the location and the level of investment that's put into a hotel to make it an amazing product. And
Yep.
I guess that at 1888 and definitely at Woolloomooloo as well, that we're very lucky that we've got an owner that is investing quite heavily into our buildings. So number one, we've got this great canvas. Secondly, the brand Ovolo, it's incredible. It's like no other brand that I've worked with before. And I guess that, the way I kind of describe, or the way that I try to describe it to people is imagine, as a GM, you're walking through your hotel and people are tackling you to tell you how much they love staying at the place. Yep. I was like, hang on a minute, is this for real? Is this for real? So it's the Ovolo brand and the way that we provide service and the way we do service is completely different to any other property that I've worked in. So I guess that there's that aspect of it, but then equally, we've gone through a huge cultural shift in our business as well, and that's greatly supported those achievements too.
So you used the word canvas, and I do want to touch on that word because the Ovolo product is very different to a lot of even lifestyle products that are on the market at the moment. It is like it's an artwork. I mean, some people call it the hotel for Instagrammers. Some of these students may or may not have been to your property. Tell us about the Ovolo concept.
Yeah, sure.
And tell us what you guys stand for. What are you as an employer?
Yeah, okay. So Ovolo, how would you describe us? We say that we're fun.
Okay.
So we're fun, we're unconventional, and we're never boring.
Yep.
And I guess that those three things kind of, I guess, resonate through everything that we do. By the way, how our interiors look, the kind of, I guess, service that we provide our guests, and also the kind of environment that we create for our teams,
Yep.
most importantly in our business. In terms of the concept, the Ovolo concept, we have this concept that we call effortless living. And the effortless living it's all about creating the most relaxed possible environment that we can for our guests, an environment where they don't need to worry about a thing when they're staying with us. And for that reason, we offer a lot of free stuff when our guests stay with us. So they've got free Wi-Fi for as many devices as they want. They've got free breakfast. They've got free happy hour, including spirits and canapes at night.
Wow.
Yeah, they've got free minibar, free loot bag, which is our snack bag. I guess this whole effortless living concept as well is in terms of how we design our rooms. So there's USB connectors bedside, so the guests don't have to leave their items on the desk. It's
on the other side of the room.
It's super frustrating.
Yeah.
And also because, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, when you stay in a hotel, you've got to pull out the bedside table just to be able to get a PowerPoint,
Yep.
A power cord there. So things like that, international adapters in every room. There's toothbrushes, there's mouthwash, there's a shopping bag, a cool shopping bag and you can take that home. I mean, we've really tried to think of everything that we possibly can to make the guest stay as effortless as it can be. iPads in the rooms, Apple TV so guests can connect to their Netflix or Stan accounts. And very excitingly, we're installing Alexa next week at 1888.
Really?
So do you know what Alexa
Yeah.
is? Yeah.
These guys might not, but
Yeah. So you can ask Alexa anything. It's like Siri.
But
so,
in your house?
Yeah. So you say, Alexa, what's the weather like today? And Alexa will tell you. Alexa, can you give me a wake-up call at 6 a.m. and play jazz?
And it does all that for you.
And it does all of that kind of thing for you.
So some people might say, hang on a minute, you're automating the hotel experience. Is that taking away from the service element of being in a hotel?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And that's the internal conversation that we're having all the
Good.
time.
Okay.
I think yes and no. I think whether we like it or not, there is going to be some kind of automation in the future in hospitality.
Yep.
We've recently looked at artificial intelligence, a system called Ivy, that will allow for the guest to text effectively front desk or WhatsApp front desk and ask a question, and it will automatically come back with the answer like the receptionist is answering. That's definitely the way of the future. More and more people are communicating that way. So yes, our question is, how do we make that Ovolo?
Yeah.
How do we make it fun, effortless, never boring? We're looking at the moment at a new property management system, which is really, really exciting.
What's so exciting about it?
It's amazing. I don't want to say too much, actually, in case you tell the competitors. But this property management system, the guests can self-check in.
Wow.
They can update their own profile. They can self-check in. You can also, with this app, you can have them cut their own room key onto their mobile
device.
phone,
Yep.
and they just touch the door, and then the door will open from there. And it's also got messaging capability, so the guests can text, they can messenger, all those kind of things, just straight down to front desk, and then a receptionist can answer.
I actually saw a property like that in New York that had that full automation of service and of inquiry. They went a little bit further and had little drones that would take their luggage to their rooms and stuff. Yeah, it was so sci-fi, but that's happening at the moment. I guess in Australia we've got to keep up with global trends. We've got to make sure that people who are travelling from overseas might be accustomed to this and are looking for that kind of experience. I remember when they started to bring in the kiosks and the self check-ins at the airport.
Yes.
People were like, oh, what do you mean? I need to talk to someone, but
most people go there now.
More people are going to the kiosks. They want to wait in line.
And that will be the future. I don't know if you've seen, but Carnival Cruises have installed the robot that makes the cocktails. And you think about it, it's just so efficient because you're never over pouring because it does it to the exact amount, and it's quite I guess from a guest experience perspective, it's cool to see the robot making the cocktail.
Oh look, I love that kind of stuff, and it's great that stuff's happening in Australia, and you guys are almost blazing that trail. Everyone will start copying. We've always talked about this concept of aligning the guest's home experience with the guest's hotel experience, and I think this is what you guys are really going for.
Absolutely. I think that there's a guest expectation now that they have in their hotel rooms what they have at home, if not more. And the question is, how do we stay ahead of that when technology is changing so quickly?
I mean, when you order takeaway at home, do you pick up the phone, or do you go onto your Uber Eats app, or do you go onto whatever app it is and order it and it arrives? Why not have that experience at a hotel? You have to call room service to do that?
It doesn't make sense, does it?
No, it's good. Some of your GM achievements, and I guess I want you to put your business hat on here. 18% ADR growth over the first 12 months, 20% RevPAR growth over the first 12 months, and then 5% improvement on EBITDA year to date 2017. I guess from a business point of view, you know, you've come from a service orientated roles, then you've kind of been thrust into a GM role where you've got to switch your shift from operations and from service, and then now you've got a business hat on. How did you go about making that transition? And I guess, how do you find that balance between profitability and then a good customer experience?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question, Anthony. I think we've got at Ovolo, we have a very different take on profitability versus guest experience. Guest experience comes first. And we're very, very fortunate that we're in a position where we are 100% guest-centric. And I guess that's what our brand is based upon. So we believe that if we focus on the guest, that the profitability will automatically follow.
Is that always the case?
Very different.
Is that always the case though?
Well, you think about it, Anthony. If I was to say to you right now, we give all that stuff away for free, do you think that we're as profitable as the other hotels in Sydney?
That's exactly what I was just about to ask. You've got free Wi-Fi, you've got all of these minibar expenses. I mean, God, if it was me and I walked into a hotel with a free minibar, typical leisure guest, just
blacklisted.
Blacklisted. Anything that's not bolted down. Yep, I'm taking that home with me.
You're that guy.
I'm that guy.
You're that guy.
How do you remain profitable with me's?
Anthony, we do.
That's amazing.
Why?
It's absolutely amazing.
Why do we become profitable? Well, why are we profitable still? It's because people are talking about us. They love what we do and they keep returning and they're telling their friends, and we can increase our rates because the demand's there. So naturally, the profitability increases. And unfortunately, I think that in business quite often we're too concerned about the profitability. The first thing that people will say is, what's the cost? I say it. What's it going to cost me? But the one thing that Girish has taught me, and that's the owner of our business, is that you focus on the guest first and the rest will follow. I'm sure that sometimes it doesn't occur. I'm sure but you know, different properties, different locations, different markets. But for us, it's quite a winning formula now.
I just love that you're challenging the norm, and I think that's I guess the message that I'd like to get across. It's not always profitability equals cutting costs, cutting corners, and you know, keeping costs nice and low. There is an element of, you know what, spend on your customers, and that investment will then return.
100%. But that's not to say that we don't focus on you know, our ordering, our stock control, you know, making sure we're negotiating the best possible prices. Of course, that's part of it. We have to make sure that we've got those systems and procedures in place to keep the costs down.
Lifestyle hotels are just, you know, the thing at the moment. Everyone's talking about lifestyle, really. At every conference I go to, lifestyle. Why have lifestyle brands become so popular over the last 2 or 3 years?
You know what, Anthony? I think that
Or have they always been there? It's just that no one's been talking about them.
No, they've not always been there,
Okay.
I don't think. But from what I hear from my guests, they are so relieved that there's an alternative out there for them.
Yep.
I think that for too long, hotels have been, I don't know, I guess quite boring, traditional, lacking in personality, lacking in soul, lacking in life.
Yeah.
And, the guests are saying that they like that the lifestyle hotels are bringing that to them. I guess that, particularly at Ovolo, we have this kind of communal space, and that's what happy hour is all about, is about bringing people together, creating relationships and connections. And I think that that's fundamental to the success of a lifestyle brand, is having, something like that surrounding the food and beverage. I think that people have become, I guess, they want a much more of a holistic experience. They want to connect with their local environment. They want to see beautiful things when they go and stay in a hotel. They want a story. And we've got a great story. We're an old wool store. If you haven't been to 1888, have you? You need to come over. So they want that. They want more. They just don't want a bed.
Yeah.
They don't
just
want
the traditional stuff.
100%.
What's your market? Who's the typical Ovolo customer?
Well, interestingly, at first I was told it's the millennials. Well, you know what? We have hardly any millennials staying with us at all.
Okay.
And
Because most millennials are broke, right?
100%. 100%.
Maybe in a few years, but not right now.
But it's interesting because the market mix is quite, or the type of guests that we get staying with us is quite diverse. I guess naturally we attract innovative brands, like Google, for example, is one of our biggest accounts.
Yep.
We deal with a lot of kind of media houses, advertising agencies. All the cool cats kind of come and stay because they want that different experience. They want to feel inspired and all those types of things when they stay. But then equally, particularly from the US, we get a lot of travellers from the US, and interestingly enough, most of the guests are over 50.
And they're not afraid of all of the technology
They
and the
love
devices.
it.
Because that's a common
love
fallacy
it.
that older people, your baby boomers, and maybe a little bit before, but they're afraid of technology and they're a little bit resistant to it, but not the case.
So it takes them a little bit longer to
Yeah.
pick it up, Anthony, but they're really inquisitive,
Yep.
I think. And I think for them it's more about connecting with the local environment. It's about really fully immersing themselves in the area that they're staying in. And I think that with the lifestyle hotels, they get an opportunity to connect on a much more deeper level, I guess, than what they would in a traditional property or a 5-star environment. And I think that that's what people are seeking.
I think so. And I think for me, a lifestyle brand is just not intimidating. I think that's you can easily walk into a lifestyle brand and just feel at home.
Yep.
Whereas sometimes you walk into a beautiful foyer in a 5-star hotel and you're just scared of touching anything because it might fall and break and you're going to be up for $6,000 or $7,000.
Well, you see that now, even just in dining, for example. There's so many more casual dining restaurants opening now on the high end scale, casual dining rather than fine dining.
Yep.
I think that formal style of service, I guess the demand for that is reducing. And I think that Australians as a whole, we're a pretty relaxed kind of culture.
Absolutely.
So I think that it works for our
market,
country and our market, 100%.
So we had a question beforehand around motivation, and I guess you've achieved so much in your time as being a GM. How do you keep your team motivated? How do you keep them kind of with their eye on the ball and make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing? What's your approach?
We have fun.
Is that it? Is that the secret to being a good manager?
Not the secret to being a good manager, but I think for Ovolo, I think the key difference for me is just having these brand pillars that we work within to really create a different environment for our team. So I guess from an engagement perspective, we have incredibly high engagement levels at 1888, and I firmly believe that's because we've tipped how we manage the team on its head. We don't really even manage them. You know what, they manage themselves and they tell me what they're doing with the business. And sometimes, you know, I have to say, hang on guys, hang on a minute, let's look at this, and this. But I guess that I see myself probably a little bit more of a facilitator, and allow the team to take a lot more control of what's happening. But guys, first and foremost, I interviewed a girl the other day and I said to her, tell me, how do you go about having fun at work? And she said, well, obviously the fun comes after the work is done. And I went, oh dear. You know, at Ovolo, our primary concern is making sure that people are smiling and they're having a great time. So you'll often see, you know, the guys doing, you know, little bits and pieces, creative bits and pieces. They'll be videoing each other, they'll be uploading it onto Facebook, you know, doing all this kind of thing while they're on shift. And we're quite happy for the guests to see that that's happening. We're happy for the guests to interact with us while that's happening. And I think that what it inevitably does is it makes our team in a great mood, which means that their mood is infectious. The guests pick up on that, and this is why we get all these great TripAdvisor reviews about, wow, the team seem really happy to be there. Well, news flash, of course they're happy to be here. Why would you not be? It's really fun to come to work every day. And I guess that, you know, having a brand pillar like innovation is, you know, I mean, as a leader, it's been great for me to be able to, I guess, allow for the team to be so much more creative. You know, we say to our team when they start with us, leave what you've learnt at the front door. We want people that have hospitality or competence in the industry, but we also don't want people to come with these fixed ideas, because we want to do things differently. And that allows for us to become a lot more creative and have a lot more fun with what we're doing.
How do you, as a manager, draw the line between fun and unprofessional?
Oh, that's a really good one. And I guess casualness as well, because our service style is very casual. Yep. And sometimes people don't get that casual doesn't mean unprofessional. Yeah. We are the best at what we do. We are an elite team. We accept nothing but the best. Yep. And just because we may speak more casually doesn't mean that we're not the best at what we do. Okay.
And is that difficult, getting that message across to your guests?
No.
No? Okay.
No, I don't think so. I think that once people come in and they experience it, they understand it. We'll have, from time to time, we'll have disparity. So say, for example, we'll get a 5-star customer that's seen that we're number 3 on TripAdvisor and they'll come and stay at 1888. They haven't done their research, they're the wrong person. You know, if they come in and they read our marketing and it's a little bit naughty, right? They might be offended for it. Or you know what, our toilet paper has "Who gives a crap" written on it. If you don't like that, go and stay at the Intercontinental. That's our take on it. Of course, this type of thing is going to happen all the time.
Do you ever see yourself working in a luxury brand?
Ooh, no.
No?
I don't think so. I think that, I mean, Ovolo Woolloomooloo is our luxury property. I was asked a while ago if I'd like to work at Ovolo Woolloomooloo, and some of you will think that I'm crazy, but I said I'm not interested. Yep. For me, Ovolo 1888, Urban, those properties really suit my personality. And for me, I guess I just want to remain true to myself, because that's what makes me happy. Yeah.
I want to talk about you now as a communitarian, as you like to put it.
Yes.
Why is it important for hospitality managers to almost give back to our communities?
Oh, I think it's absolutely critical, Anthony. Yep. I think, and it's not just hospitality managers, it's leaders of business all around the country. I think that I was looking at some research the other day, and I think it was saying something like $15 billion a year is donated to charities by businesses around Australia. You imagine if that contribution wasn't made, and not just in monetary terms, but also in donation of time. If we didn't support the community, if we didn't donate to charities, where would that $17 billion come from? It'd come from taxes. We'd have less research into, things like cures for cancer. We'd have organisations that provide a lot of great support to our communities would dissolve. Do we want that? No, we don't want that.
And I guess that almost fits in with your ethos in terms of a lifestyle brand of being one with your surroundings and one with your community. Is just engaging with the community on multiple levels, not just about being a for-profit hotel there to draw money.
100%.
Yeah. Tell us about your involvement with the Royal North Shore Hospital and the Cancer Services Division. Some of the work that you did there.
That's probably the most successful partnership that I've had with the local community. When I started at Urban, I had the absolute privilege of meeting a great man, Ray Arulo. He was the director of the counselling services for Royal North Shore Hospital. And Ray was telling me about, some of the situations that he was dealing with as a counsellor on the lines over there at the hospital. Then he started telling me about the Cancer Services Division and how many people locally had been impacted by cancer. And I was completely overwhelmed by what this unit does and how they were supporting these, not just locals, but some people in the regional areas as well. And that's when Ray told me about a charity that they had that was designed around, I guess, creating some funding to give back to families that were impacted by cancer. And that's initially how we got on board with them. We started donating every year. We also commenced giving them free room nights for people that were struggling financially while they were coming to have cancer treatment. We also offered reduced rates because they had this fund that they could draw upon, so they'd still pay for some of these guests but at a super discounted rate. And it was great that the business was in a position where we could afford to do it, and I had a lot of support from the owner at the time. What else did we do? And then in the end, I ended up saying to them, look, it doesn't make sense for you to continue leasing or hiring rooms from us. We really need to buy you an apartment. You need to buy you an apartment, you need to have that available, we'll service the apartment complimentary, da-da-da-da-da. And unfortunately, I left Urban just as that was happening.
Did it happen?
No, it didn't. It was a government funding issue, which didn't make much sense to me, but anyway. But the engagement with the Royal North Shore Hospital was very special to me, and not just to me, for all the team as well.
I was just going to say, what's the flow-on effect to the rest of the team of doing that kind of stuff?
It's really powerful, Anthony. I think there's a lot of people that loved that engagement with the community, and they want to know as well that they're working for a business that does good. So, and I know for me personally, having worked with Les Erdy for, 7 years, his Philanthropy at Erdy Group, it was only after we passed away that we got to understand how much he was giving back to the community. But it really made it quite a pleasure to know that you're working for someone that's doing good for the world. So I think it's a very powerful thing. Oh, look,
I love it. And I guess one of the other community engagement projects that you had was the Homeless Connect Australia outreach project. What was that one all about?
So Anthony, that was something that we've just kicked off since my starting at Ovolo. So basically all the leadership team from Ovolo go once a year and they do a day of serving the homeless. So it's usually held over at Town Hall here, and they set up different sections with support services for the homeless. They give out clothes, they give them a nice warm feed. They can find out, or there's housing services are represented there, there's health services there, and so on and so forth. So we just throw on the orange shirt and spend the day helping out the homeless. It's a good thing to do.
I love it. I really, really love that you guys are, in that space, because sometimes we forget about the communities around us, and you're not just a business, you're there to contribute as well. You mentioned who gives a crap. When I read this, I was like, what's going on?
Do you know what it is?
No, I want you to tell me about it.
Oh dear, so who gives a crap is a toilet paper. It's a little bit cheeky. The branding's really cool, which is what originally drew my attention, but who gives a crap? It's a bamboo toilet paper product that gives 50% of its proceeds back to, I guess, third world countries to build sanitation systems. So I guess that there's a little bit of a, good for the world.
There's a bit of edginess to it. It totally aligns with your product. Are you constantly on the lookout for these kinds of, outside of the box type opportunities to get involved with?
I'd say I spend 8 hours of my week looking for new projects and new opportunities.
How important is that for a manager to set aside that kind of time to do innovation or just to do, exploring opportunities?
For a brand like Ovolo,
or anyone really.
It's critical.
Well, for you guys, absolutely. But
Absolutely.
just in general, I mean, managers really need to be spending that time outside of just the here and now and thinking about the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess that with the Ovolo in particular, we're almost forced to do that. We have processes in place that mean that we need to be constantly presenting new ideas. And with I guess an owner like Girish Junjunwala that's got a million ideas, million balls in the air at once, there's a lot of ideas flying around. In fact, we go through a lot of kind of entrepreneurial and innovation training. And what were they telling us? Something like we need 3,000 ideas before we find the right one. So we're under pressure to come up with new ideas.
That's incredible. And I guess how do you determine which is the idea that you want to go for, and how do you almost manage up to say, all right, this is where we need to focus, not over here. Let's come over here.
Yeah. I think I don't know. Sometimes when you see it, you go, that's it.
It's your
you
gut.
just that's it, and everyone says that's it. That's really cool. Let's do that, and it's just great that we've got the backing of our owner,
Is
and
it
he's
okay to
willing
fail?
to win.
Is it okay when things don't go right? Yeah.
100%. In fact, we see failure as a learning, which was very different for me because I guess I come from a little bit of the old school where you don't express your failure, you don't reveal your failure. But in the environment that we're working in now, we just learn from our mistakes and we move on in a very, very fast fashion.
Oh, look, I absolutely love it. I guess I've got one more question for you, and then we'll throw it out to the audience. You said you don't believe in a work-life balance. And I'm going to quote you: "When you love what you do, work is not work. It's just living." How do our graduates, or how do our students and our graduates start to live by that ethos? I think that's fantastic.
It's crazy, Anthony. When did work not become part of life? Like, it's just life, all right? It's just life. And I think that the way that I see it is if you've got a positive attitude, I think I'd be happy doing anything, really, because my attitude towards what I do is always positive. And I think that, people say to me, why are you at work till 7 o'clock at night? Why are you still there at 9 o'clock at night? You know why? Because I'm having a chat to this regular guest and he's a really good guy and I like hanging out with him. Like, to me, work and life are the same thing. And I think that if you really truly enjoy what you're doing, it's just part of life. And obviously, you need downtime. I'm not saying that you work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Of course you need your downtime, and you need to take time to stop and smell the roses.
I love it. Let's throw it out to the audience. Who's got a question that they'd like to ask? Go for it.
Your owner seems very fun and exciting, but I want to know your relationship with them.
Relationship with the owner is fantastic. He challenges me. And quite often there's a bit of argy-bargy. So some quite heated discussions. In fact, just recently, not just recently, around 6 months ago, he wants to change all of the amenities in the hotel to pump packs. Right?
Okay.
I couldn't believe it. What do you mean, Garish? Why do you want to change them to pump packs? That's not hygienic. That's not this. You know, the guest experience. You want to steal them. You want to steal the amenities. You want to take them home. And he says, well, Amanda, how are we going to change the world? We've got all this plastic that's being thrown out, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then I went, ooh, okay, maybe I didn't think about it from that perspective.
That was his context. He was,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I sat there and I thought about it, and I'm still thinking, no. And I've gone back to the team and I've said, this is what Garish is thinking. You've got to be kidding. There's no way we're doing that. That's so cheap. That's nasty. That's this, and this. Well, the next thing you know, we're traveling, we're going to Europe, we're going to New York. All the cool places are rolling out pump packs. Wow. And I guess that Garish is so abreast of what's happening in the industry. He can see things before they're about to happen. Yep. And I guess for me, it's quite inspiring to have a leader that challenges me in that respect, because my traditional ideas of how a hotel should operate, they need to be challenged, and they have to be challenged every time. It does mean from time to time we go head to head and I'm like, I'm going to kill him. No, but seriously, but the relationship is very, very good.
There was a question over here.
Yep. So I've gone from like your early days, like when you're at Travelodge with you. So like as we're all graduating, studying and working, like we're kind of all at the level of kind of moving up from that just team member to supervisor, team leader. And if you're doing it within the same company,
yes,
like you said, you know, all of a sudden your co-workers are people that you're looking after, you know, managing, not too high level. How do you I always think, how do you make sure that your communication with people that used to be at level with you, how do you make sure that it's just constructive and not coming across as condescending?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I guess that I always like to stick with facts, not feelings. Yeah. So if I'm having a conversation with someone, unless they've hurt my feelings, well, we're getting a bit emotional here, but I like to just say action, reaction. So things like, I don't know, use the bathtub method, for example, start with the positive, go in with the negative, end with the positive, but always stick to the facts. I think that initially when I started having these conversations with people, it was very uncomfortable for me. So I'd always take the time out before I spoke to them to think about how I was going to speak to them without emotion. And I think that that's really important, because it takes time to master that, to remove the emotion from a conversation. So if you take 5 minutes out, maybe sit in the toilet, I don't know, wherever it needs to be, take a notepad and pen. Okay, this is the way I'm going to structure the conversation, pull them aside, and then go for it.
Yeah, because the conversation that you talked about with your best friend, like I know that I would really struggle with a conversation like that. But it's like, you know, it needs to happen, but like it would just be like, for me personally, like my demeanor, like I would find that really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I need to tell my best friend, you did the wrong thing.
But you know what? Everyone feels the same way.
Yeah.
I speak to COOs that feel exactly that way every time that they're about to go into a conversation. So I think it's human. I think it's quite natural for us it's comfortable for us to give positive feedback, and it's not comfortable for us to give negative feedback naturally. But I think that once you've practiced it over and over and over again, it's like serving a plate to a table.
Yeah.
And that's where you want to get to. You just got to have the practice.
And I guess it is a skill that you've got to learn by doing. It's not you can sit down and read a textbook on how to do it. You've really got to actually practice it and go through that and deal with the emotions and really learn how to almost leave that situation and not carry that baggage with you after
and
you've done it.
How do you, when they may react to you in an emotional way, how are you going to stop that from impacting upon your emotions?
And it's really easy for them to call the condescending line if you are being constructive.
Absolutely. So you need to
Yeah.
to be able to say, oh, hang on a minute, that's not what it's about. Let's go back to this. And it takes a while to master that art, that's for sure.
Great question. Yes, down the front.
You mentioned that the staff in Ovolo has more fun in the hotel, they're more casual. Have you noticed any difference with the younger people of today in terms of level of motivation, work ethic, than with the time you were just starting? Has there been, have people been changing jobs more often? Did they need more motivational work on?
Yeah, I think so. I think that over the years, the tenure has reduced. I think there's a tendency for people to move around a lot more than what they did in the past. I just think it's because times changed. You know, people like to be constantly kind of challenged and have something going on. So there's definitely been a shift in that respect.
Is that challenging for a hotel manager to constantly have a workforce that's so transient, coming in, going out, retraining, restaffing?
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. So I guess that what we focus on is employee engagement. So really identifying what motivates them and trying to get them to, try and offer that to them. For example, we've got a girl at front desk who is so incredibly creative. I mean, in the sense of, she does these welcome cards. She's drawing avocados. She's drawing, I don't know what the thing is that she writes on it. Draws a pear and says, oh, we think you're the perfect pear. All this kind of thing. So we saw that she enjoyed it and we went, okay, you like that. How can we focus more on that artistic side of what she's doing? So we organised brush lettering workshops for the whole of the front office team. So they've learnt to do this beautiful brush lettering for their welcome letters. So it's just, identifying what people love about what they do and I guess allowing for them to do that. Another example of that would be Victor and Tabitha. Victor's finished uni, but he's a producer, and Tabitha is an actress that's at Yale. An actor, I should say. I can't say actress nowadays, but she's studying acting at university. So now, at the moment, we're using Tabitha and Victor to teach our team how to act on the floor. So they've written this whole training program around, I guess, conducting yourself with positivity when you may not be feeling that way. And let's face it, we all have really, really bad days. I have bad days. We all have bad days, but we can't let it show. So, working through acting and training tips. So I guess that we try and look at the skill sets of each individual. We try to use those skills and give people more of what they enjoy doing. And, for some people it's developmental. So we offer those opportunities to those people. It's just a matter of working with the individual.
We're not really talking about customer service anymore. It's more customer experience.
Yes.
And I guess, adding performance art into what we do is essentially what we do anyway. It's just adding a layer to it. We're there to give the guest an experience.
100%. In fact, I think that the best customer and service employees I've ever had have been actors.
Wow.
Or they've had some kind of acting training, because I guess that they can just pull off this personality.
Do we need to be teaching drama to these guys?
I don't know. I don't know.
Put that as an elective into your course. Yes, up the back.
Are there any books that you've read over your career that really helped you develop personally?
Wow.
You know what, I'm not much of a reader. I'm a bit of a TEDx talker. So I watch plenty of YouTube clips. Don't ask me to tell you which ones, because I watch 3 per week. I have set times for TED Talks, and usually they're on leadership. But I guess that I think that for us, from a learning development perspective at Ovolo, we do see that that's the future of learning.
Hey, No.
Close.
I agree.
Yeah, so we're really encouraged to learn in that environment because it is so incredibly flexible. I guess also just there's a lot of people that I follow on LinkedIn and I read blogs. There's one by a gentleman and I can't remember his name, but he talks about love and discipline and how important it is for a leader to show love for their people. And that really resonates with me because I think that you have to have an emotional connection with your employees for them to want to follow you, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. Be able to lead them. But then equally you need discipline. And that can often be too difficult. And what I see in leaders is quite often they're too high love, low discipline, or they're low love, high discipline, and people don't like working for that kind of leader. So for us at the moment, I guess we're trying to teach love and discipline
as equals.
As equals, absolutely. But yeah, not much for a leader, unless it's like young adult fiction.
One more question.
How do you plan to compete with Airbnb?
We don't.
I love that answer.
We just don't. Yeah, do you know what? I think that there's enough business there for all of us. In fact, we've recently done a little bit of a partnership with a business that works off Airbnb. So we don't see it as a threat at all. We see it, or it can be something that complements our business. For example, Uber Eats. Our restaurant closes at 10. After that, we don't have room service. They just guests can order via Uber Eats, and we plate up everything for them in their room.
Wow.
So I don't think, Airbnb, I don't think is a threat to us.
It's being able to play in that disruption space, right? And disruption is just a fancy word for change.
Embrace it.
How do you exactly
embrace it?
Yep.
Go with the flow. If you're doing what you're doing well, people will come and stay with you.
I love it. Look, one more, and then we'll wrap up.
You told that the hotel were highly involved with the technology thing. What do you think? How it will influence working places, like for real people? Will it reduce the positions in the hotel?
Absolutely. It will reduce positions in some aspects, but then others will be created off the back of it.
Give us an example. So let's say, for example, receptionists eventually disappear, or front desk staff disappear. What's an area that might pop up?
Let's not use reception as an example.
Okay, fine. Let's
use the legal industry.
Okay.
As an example.
Okay.
So legal industry is all based on precedent.
Yep.
Right? So at the moment they're working on this program that can understand the law, understand the set precedents based on every case that's ever been through the courts, and it will churn out the result.
Wow.
So there still has to be someone to administrate that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that there's going to be automation. What that's going to look like, I don't know. I think bar definitely.
Yep.
We're looking at these robots doing these cocktails.
Yep.
But then there's going to be someone at the end saying, "There you go, mate." Like this.
I'll give you another example. There's a piece of technology that they're working on that it's basically a robot chef. And this robot chef will do all of the manual prep work for a chef. So it'll chop all your carrots and peel your potatoes and all of the boring stuff that chefs don't do. But what it will do is it'll allow human chefs to actually cook more and spend more time cooking and spending it in service rather than out the back just preparing their ingredients. So that's kind of where the balance will come. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. The robots are going to take over, you know.
Absolutely.
Who knows?
But then there'll be more jobs in the technology industry, obviously.
Absolutely.
So it's
Absolutely.
just shifting.
Look, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Amanda.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your evening.